Speak to money by its name tonight and watch it come running. Neville Goddard taught that the coin you long for tonight is only waiting on the inside for you to call it by name, the way a father calls a wandering child home, not by shouting into the dark, but by speaking the child's name as though the child already stood before him. There is a verse in the book of Romans, the 4th chapter, the 17th verse, that Neville Goddard read not as ancient history, but as a description of your own mind at work tonight. It reads, "Who calleth those things which be not as though they were?" And Neville Goddard would stop you right there and say, "Do you see it? It does not say who begs for those things which be not. It does not say who hopes for those things which be not. It says who calleth them, who names them, who speaks to them as though they already were. And this is the whole secret of supply hidden in 9 words. You have spent years asking money to come, pleading with circumstance to soften, checking accounts and sighing, and none of that is calling. That is only staring at what is not there and confirming its absence. Calling is different. Calling is standing in the feeling of the money already received and speaking to your life from that place, and this is where you have been blocking your own good without knowing it, because the very way you have been taught to pursue money, through worry disguised as effort, through checking and rechecking what is lacking, is the exact posture that keeps it from you. You do not draw water by staring at the dry well, you draw it by imagining the cup already full in your hand. Say it with me. I am at ease with money. I am the one it flows toward. Imagination creates my reality. Again, I am at ease with money. I am the one it flows toward. Imagination creates my reality. If you want tomorrow's teaching to find you the moment it is ready, let this be the video where you quietly subscribe, so the next key does not miss you. And if something in you just went still while you said those words, if some old tight place loosened even slightly, come into the comments and simply type "It's done." Let those 2 words be your seal. Not a promise you are making, but a fact you are recognizing. The first key is this: stop asking money to come and start speaking to it as though it has already arrived. Most people pray for money the way a beggar prays at a locked gate, rattling it, hoping someone hears. But Neville Goddard taught that the true suppliant does not rattle the gate. He walks through it, because in his own mind, the gate was never locked. So tonight, before you sleep, instead of thinking about the bill that frightens you, speak silently to the money itself. Not as a stranger you are chasing, but as a servant you are addressing. Feel yourself saying to it, "You are mine. You belong with me. You have already come." Notice the tone this requires. It cannot be spoken in anxiety. It can only be spoken in quiet certainty, the way a man speaks to his own hand, knowing full well it will obey him. Consider how differently 2 people can stand at the very same mailbox. One stands there hoping, shoulders tight, silently begging the envelope to contain good news. The other stands there almost bored, because in his own mind the matter was settled long before he walked outside. He is not wondering if the check has come, he is simply confirming what he already knows to be so. The mailbox has not changed, only the inner posture has changed, and this is the entire difference between begging and calling. Begging leans forward into an uncertain future, calling stands still in the present already satisfied. Notice how naturally you already do this with small, settled things. You do not beg the sun to rise. You do not plead with your own name to still belong to you in the morning. You simply assume them, and they simply are. This same quiet assuming, applied now to money, is what Neville Goddard meant by calling those things which be not as though they were. Not a trick of words, but a shift in how certain you allow yourself to feel about what has not yet shown itself to the eye. One woman who wrote to Neville described doing exactly this with a specific sum she needed for rent. She stopped checking her mail in dread and instead spoke inwardly each night. "It is here. It is done," repeating it the way one repeats a fact already known. And within days the check came from a source she had forgotten existed. The specific amount is not what matters. The pattern is, calling things that be not as though they were, is not fantasy. It is the deliberate use of the one power that has been shaping your life all along, whether you noticed it or not. The coin you long for tonight is not out searching for a way to reach you. It is waiting only on the inside for you to call it by its true name. I am the one who calls money by name, and it comes. The second key is this. Know that the money you seek is not out there scattered among other people's pockets, waiting to be captured. It is a state of consciousness you have simply not yet entered. Neville Goddard taught that everyone and everything you meet is yourself, pushed out into the world. And this includes your bank account, your job offers, the raise you want, the check that has not yet come. These are not separate objects floating in someone else's hands. They are outpicturings of the state you are living in on the inside. So when you feel poor, you are not describing your circumstances accurately. You are broadcasting a state, and the world simply obeys the broadcast. Think for a moment about how ordinary this looks in a single day. A man opens his banking app first thing in the morning, not to plan, but to brace. His thumb hovers before the number even loads, and something in his chest tightens before he sees a single digit. That tightening is not caused by the number. The number has not even appeared yet. The tightening is the state he carried into the moment, already decided before the evidence arrived. Later that same day he stands in line at the store, watching the total climb on the little screen, and he feels his stomach fall, as though the machine itself were against him. But the machine is neutral. The register does not know his name. What he is truly reacting to is the room he has been living in all week, the room called not enough, and he has simply carried its furniture with him into the store. Now picture a second man, same city, same kind of bills, same kind of week, but he opens his banking app with a kind of quiet ease, almost boredom, because in his imagination the matter is already settled. He glances at the total in the store and feels nothing sharp at all, not because his number is larger, but because his room is different. He has been living in the room called provided for, and Neville Goddard taught that this is the entire difference between two lives that look identical on paper. The difference was never the market, it was the state each carried afterward. One assumed lack and wandered through his hours carrying the smell of it with him. The other assumed provision and walked through his hours as though he already belonged there, and doors opened for the second man, not because he worked harder, but because he occupied a different room in consciousness entirely. Think of states as rooms in a vast house. You do not change the house by rearranging the furniture in the room called lack. You change your life by simply walking down the hall into the room called abundance and shutting the door behind you. And here is the part people miss. You are never the room. You only visit it. So if you have been living in the room called scarcity, checking the app with dread, watching the register with a sinking stomach, you can leave tonight, not by fighting it, not by analyzing why you wandered in there, but by quietly assuming the feeling of the room next door, and once you assume it long enough, faithfully enough, the outer world has no choice but to rearrange itself to match the room you have chosen to live in. I am not a lack state, I only visited it, and I have already left. The third key is this: feeling is the secret, and nowhere is this more tested than with money. Because money carries with it a lifetime of anxious feeling attached like rust to a coin. You can say the right words about abundance all day, but if underneath the words you still feel the tightness of not enough, the words are empty air. Neville Goddard taught that it is not what you say, but what you feel as true, that produces after its kind. It is not the sentence on your lips that shapes your life. It is the sensation beneath the sentence. So let us walk through an ordinary day the way most people actually live it. Morning comes, and before the eyes are even fully open, there is a small clench in the stomach about the account balance. That clench is a prayer, though no one calls it that. Mid-morning, a bill arrives in the inbox and the shoulders tighten. That tightening is a prayer. At lunch, a friend mentions a raise they received, and a small sting of comparison passes through the chest. That sting is a prayer. Mid-afternoon, you pass a shop window and see something you want, and instantly a voice inside says you cannot afford that. And that instant verdict, spoken so quickly you barely notice it, is also a prayer. By evening, the mind runs through the numbers again before sleep, rehearsing lack one more time as if for practice. And that rehearsal is the most powerful prayer of the day because it is offered closest to sleep. When the mind is most impressionable, none of these moments were spoken as requests. And yet every one of them was answered. Because feeling is the real language of prayer, the outer voice matters far less than the inner state. Consider a man who tells himself all morning that he is calling money in. He repeats his affirmation on the drive to work. He even smiles while saying it. But the moment his phone buzzes with a notification from his bank, he feels his chest drop. And that drop, small as it seems, outweighs the whole morning's recitation. Because it is not the recitation that plants. It is the drop. It is the felt conviction underneath. This is why so many people affirm abundance for months and see no movement. They have mistaken the mouthing of words for the believing of a state. And Neville Goddard was firm on this point. The feeling is the secret, not the phrase. So the third key asks you to become suspicious of these small daily flinches. Not to fight them, but to notice them the way a gardener notices a weed before it takes root. Pause for a moment right now and pick one real flinch from your own week. The account you dread checking, the invoice you avoid opening, the price tag that makes you flinch before you even look at your wallet. Name it quietly to yourself and see it clearly, because what is seen clearly can finally be changed. Each time you catch one of these flinches, replace it, quietly, without strain, with the feeling of the thing already secured. If the bill arrives, instead of tightening, let a small, silent breath say it is already paid. If the friend mentions their raise, instead of comparing, let a small, silent breath say, mine has already come too. If the shop window stings, let a small, silent breath say, I could have that easily if I wanted it. This is not denial of the outer fact. It is refusal to let the outer fact dictate your inner state. Because Neville Goddard was clear that the outer is always the servant of the inner, never the other way around. It is not the world that decides how you feel about money. It is how you feel about money that decides what the world will show you next. And once you begin catching these small flinches through the day, one by one, gently, without struggle, you start to notice something remarkable. The day itself begins to feel different by evening. Lighter, less braced, less clenched at the jaw. And a lighter evening state is what gets carried into sleep. And what is carried into sleep is what gets planted most deeply of all. So the flinch you caught at noon becomes the harvest you gather months from now. Quietly, almost without remembering where it began. I feel the money as already mine before the world shows it to me. The fourth key is this: revise the day that disappointed you. Because most people let the story of a lean bank account or a missed opportunity stand exactly as it happened, replaying it as fact instead of treating it as clay still soft enough to reshape. Neville Goddard taught that no event is final until you have accepted it as final in your own imagination. And this is harder than it sounds, because the world trains you to believe the opposite, that the no you received was the last word, that the low number on the screen is simply the truth of your life. But Neville was firm that the outer fact is only the last scene of a story your imagination already wrote earlier, and if you do not like the ending, you are permitted to write it again. Picture a man named Daniel who runs a small repair shop. Today, a customer called to cancel a job worth real money. Daniel hung up and felt that familiar drop in his chest. The drop that says, "There goes another one." And if he carries that drop to bed unedited, he plants tomorrow's lack tonight. But instead, before sleep, Daniel sits quietly and replays the call. Only this time the customer says yes. Please go ahead, and Daniel feels the quiet satisfaction of a job confirmed, letting himself feel exactly what he would have felt had the call gone that way the first time. This is not pretending it did not happen, it is refusing to let it stand as the final draft. Neville often pictured an author revising a manuscript. No author sends the first draft to print. The real story is told in the revision, and here is the deeper reason this works. Your imagination does not distinguish between the memory of an event and the memory of a vividly felt revision. Both become part of the inner record shaping what comes next. So when Daniel revises the canceled call, he is quietly retraining the very state that produces his days. Think of it as closing a door softly, instead of leaving it flung open to the cold. Each night, a disappointing scene goes unrevised. That door stays open, and the draft repeats itself. But each night, you gently rewrite the sting. You close it, and something new is free to walk through in its place. You do not need to wait for some distant future moment to start living in the end. You can start with the smallest disappointment of today, the short answer, the lower number, the canceled call, and simply give it the ending it should have had. Do this quietly and consistently, and you will notice tomorrow's events begin arriving already shaped closer to the revision, because you have stopped confirming lack with your attention and started confirming provision instead. I revise today so tomorrow arrives already rewritten. The fifth key is this, and it is the deepest one, so let us walk into it slowly, in several parts, because everything we have spoken of so far, the calling, the states, the feeling, the revision, all of it funnels down into this one narrow doorway, and if you miss this doorway, you will find yourself doing all the right words with none of the depth behind them. First, consider what Neville Goddard called the state akin to sleep, that drowsy threshold just before you fully drift off, where the reasoning mind grows heavy and quiet, and the deeper imagination becomes strangely wide open, almost tender, almost defenseless. This is not ordinary daydreaming with your eyes open and your worries fully armed, and it is not full unconsciousness either where nothing can be planted at all. It is that narrow, precious hallway between the two, the place where a grown man becomes as trusting as a child again, and Neville taught that whatever you feel as true in that hallway sinks in far deeper than anything spoken during a busy waking day, because in that drowsy place the critical, arguing part of the mind has finally stepped aside. It has gone to sit down somewhere else. And so there is no one left inside you to say, but the account says otherwise. There is no one left to say, but you have never had that kind of money before. In that hallway, you are simply free. So if you truly want to speak to money by its name and have it heard all the way down, the richest moment is never at noon, with your eyes wide open and your worries fully staffed and on duty. The richest moment is at night, in that soft falling place just before sleep finally takes you. Second, consider how ordinary this actually looks in practice, because people imagine it must be some elaborate ritual, candles, incense, a special posture, and Neville taught nothing of the kind. Picture a man named Thomas, and Thomas is not unusual. Thomas is simply tired the way most people are tired by 9 at night. He has spent the day quietly worried about a debt. He lies down, and instead of running the debt through his mind one more time the way he has done for months, he lets his body grow heavy. He lets his breathing slow the way it slows naturally right before sleep. And instead of reaching for a grand vision of wealth, he reaches for something small and completely ordinary. He imagines himself the next morning, opening an envelope that holds the exact relief he needs. He does not shout it. He does not force it. He simply feels the small, quiet satisfaction of a problem that has been solved. He feels his own shoulders drop the way shoulders drop when a burden has genuinely lifted. And he holds that little feeling, gently, the way you hold a candle so it does not gutter out. 2 or 3 slow passes through the scene, feeling more than picturing, and then he lets himself sink the rest of the way into sleep, still wearing that quiet feeling like a coat. This is the whole practice. There is nothing more complicated than this, and yet almost no one does it. Because almost everyone spends that precious drowsy hallway rehearsing the very lack they wish to be free of, tossing over the debt one more time, letting the mind circle the shortage like a dog circling before it lies down in an old worn groove. And whatever groove you lie down in at night is the groove that gets pressed deepest into the following days. Third, consider persistence. Because Thomas does not do this once and call it finished. One night plants a seed, and seeds do not argue with the gardener about how quickly they must break the surface. So Thomas returns to that same hallway the next night, and the night after, feeling the same small, satisfied scene, the envelope, the relief, the dropped shoulders, and here is where most people quietly give up. They do the exercise once, they wake to the same balance the next morning, and they decide it failed. But Neville Goddard was clear that the outer world often takes a little time to rearrange itself around a new inner conviction. The harvest is never late. It is only unseen for a while. So your part, and Thomas's part, is never to dig up the seed each morning to inspect its roots. Your part is only to keep returning, night after night, faithfully, without straining, until one day you notice something has quietly shifted. You are no longer performing an exercise at all. You have simply become someone for whom that small, satisfied scene is now the plain and obvious truth of your life. This is what Neville meant by living in the end. Not visiting the end once as a clever technique to be tried and abandoned, but quietly relocating your whole sense of identity to stand inside it permanently, so that your daily thoughts, your daily conversations, your daily small decisions about spending and saving and asking, all flow out naturally from a person for whom the money has already arrived, rather than a person still hoping, still checking, still bracing. And consider one more angle before we leave this doorway. The state akin to sleep works precisely because it removes your resistance. All day you resist your own good without knowing it. You resist it with a raised eyebrow at the account balance. You resist it with a sigh over a bill. You resist it with a comparison to a friend's raise. But in that drowsy hallway, there is no eyebrow left to raise, no sigh left to sigh. There is only the feeling you choose to lie down in, which is why the same words spoken loudly at noon can fall flat, while a whisper felt at midnight can move mountains. It was never about volume, it was always about depth, and depth is only available in that narrow doorway between waking and sleep. So tonight, do not skip this door. Walk through it deliberately, gently, the same small ordinary scene, night after night, until it stops being a practice and simply becomes who you have quietly become. I return to the feeling nightly until it becomes who I am. The sixth key is this: let your I am carry the money quietly, without announcement, without needing anyone else to notice or approve. Neville Goddard taught that I am is the deepest name of God within you, the bare awareness of being that precedes every state you have ever stepped into. Before you were rich or poor, before you were confident or afraid, there was simply I am, pure and unclaimed, waiting to be given a direction. And whatever you attach to those two words becomes the very shape your life takes. So when you say quietly to yourself, I am behind, I am struggling, I am barely getting by, you are not reporting a fact about your bank account, you are issuing a command to the whole of your future, and it obeys, not because it is cruel, but because it is faithful. Consider an ordinary man who works an ordinary job. Each payday he opens his account and sighs, I am always short, and by the next payday he is without fail short again, not because the number is fixed, but because he has spent 30 days feeding I am that same instruction. Now picture that same man catching the thought mid-sentence one gray Tuesday morning. The coffee is lukewarm, the account is low, and the old words begin to rise. I am. And this time, before the sentence finishes itself the way it always has, he gently redirects it. I am provided for. I am at ease. I am the one money moves toward, said quietly, as a man might state his own name to himself alone in the dark, certain of it, needing no one to confirm it. And this is the whole practice, a small, steady flame kept lit all day, catching the old sentence before it completes and finishing it instead with truth. It is not the words that do the work, it is the quiet ownership behind them. No strain, no pleading, just plain recognition of what already is. And once you begin naming yourself this way, the anxious reaching for money falls away entirely, because a man who knows he is provided for has no need to grasp. He simply lives, unhurried, and money, sensing no resistance beneath the surface, moves toward him the way water moves toward the lowest, most restful ground. And this is the quiet secret hidden inside the very title of this teaching. You thought you needed to learn the name of the money, to find the right words for the right sum, but the name you needed to speak all along was never the money's name at all. It was your own, spoken quietly, spoken certainly, as though it were the only true sentence left to say, I am the one money answers to, quietly, completely, now. Here is the whole picture. Calling is not asking. It is speaking from the end already accomplished. States are rooms you visit, and never your true identity. Feeling is the real prayer offered all day, whether you notice it or not. Revision lets you reshape today before it hardens into permanent fact. The state akin to sleep is the deepest doorway where the assumption plants itself beyond argument. And I am is the quiet name beneath every other name you have been calling money by. And when you look closely, you see these were never 6 separate keys at all. They were one single key turned 6 times. The key of assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled and living faithfully from within it, until the outer world simply catches up to what you already, quietly, are. If what you have heard tonight stirred something steady in you, something that says, I am ready to stop rehearsing lack and start living in the end on purpose, every day, not just tonight, then the 21-day reality shift was built exactly for that. It is a simple daily walk, a few minutes each morning and each night, guided the whole way through, to help you enter the state akin to sleep on purpose, revise your days on purpose, and let your I am carry provision quietly through every hour. It is available now for a gentle price, with a full refund if it does not serve you. And the link is right there in the description waiting for you whenever you are ready. Say it with me one final time. I am at ease with money. I am the one it flows toward. Imagination creates my reality. And so tonight, as you lie down, do not ask money to come. Simply speak to it by its name, quietly, certainly, the way you would call someone home, and watch it come running.